Hey, if you like my videos, you might also like my comedy series YouTube Blue, which premieres every Saturday on the YouTube Blue YouTube channel. Go check out the link in the description and the card above to watch the latest episode. Now on with the video. Hello everyone and welcome back. If you haven't already, you should go and watch part 1 of this video. Okay, now that hopefully all of you have seen part 1, let's not waste any more time and get into it. So where we last left off, Dr. Connors had just transformed into the lizard for the first time. This next part is pretty similar to what we got in the original, just in a slightly different context. The lizard goes to the bridge to stop Ratha and Spider-Man swings by. So in the original movie, you sometimes see Spider-Man and think, Jesus, I know he's supposed to be quippy, but he's kind of an ass. Well, that's actually kind of perfect right now. You see him being a jerk to that thief, and then he gets chased by the police to the bridge. He fights the lizard, saves the kid, becoming a little more like Spider-Man, and he saves Dr. Ratha as well. So something that's weird about the original movie is that there's this big concern that Dr. Ratha is going to give the formula to the patient, so the lizard goes to try and stop him. But Spider-Man saves him, and then nothing else happens with him in the movie. They explicitly say that he is alive, but the fact that he's giving this formula to these patients is never addressed. I'm guessing he probably died in a deleted scene or something, but anyways, that will come up later. So then Peter goes to Gwen's house after being trashed by the lizard, and you can kind of tell that he's really becoming Spider-Man, because Gwen's asking him why he would do something like this, and he's telling her that it kind of started as an ego trip, but that he's starting to do it for the feeling that comes with helping people. So the next day we see Dr. Connors sitting in his home, and I kind of wish he and the lizard were a little more like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So he's sitting there kind of feeling sick, just thinking about the people he hurt, but the lizard is in his head influencing his thoughts, telling him that it was all payback to everyone who's ever made fun of him or treated him lesser because of his disability, kind of twisting his deeply rooted thoughts into evil ones. So after school, Peter goes to Oscorp to meet with Dr. Connors, but when he gets to his office, it's just a wreck. Papers all over the floor. Clearly it's been raided by Oscorp to get the formula. This gives Peter a flashback to him as a kid, following his dad up the stairs and seeing his dad walk into his home office and discovering it's been raided. So, he asks around and finds out that Dr. Connors was fired. So on his way over to Dr. Connors' house, we cut to Dr. Connors and the lizard fighting over how to deal with the fact that Ratha is still alive, and eventually the lizard wins out and Dr. Connors transforms into the lizard. So the lizard runs to find Dr. Ratha, sort of trashing Dr. Connors' office in the process. So Peter is walking down the street and hears something, so he runs to Kurt's house, and his wife says that there was rustling in Kurt's lab and now he's gone. Peter goes to the lab and sees it's trashed, with claw marks everywhere, and immediately thinks that the lizard has taken Dr. Connors. So he gets on his Spidey suit and goes on the hunt for the lizard. Eventually he finds the lizard in the sewer, but instead of Dr. Connors, he has Dr. Ratha captured. So at first Peter is just kind of sleuthing in the background, and the lizard is able to pull out of Ratha that the formula has already been delivered to the hospital and that trials begin in a couple days. In the lizard's mind, Dr. Connors is telling him to tell Dr. Ratha to stop the experiments, but the lizard instead just lets him go and tells him not to tell anyone about this. So Spider-Man kind of reveals himself and he fights the lizard, asking where Dr. Connors is. This is when the lizard reveals he is Dr. Connors, and Spider-Man tries to stop him, but the lizard keeps alluding to the idea that Spider-Man should join him and that together they could rule the world, but Spidey just escapes. So after this, he transforms back into Dr. Connors, and he asks the lizard why he didn't make Ratha stop the human trials. The lizard essentially tells Kurt that the humans are weak. They've done nothing but neglect them, but now they are the next evolution, the new master race of Earth, and that the humans will fall. The lizard has taken Dr. Connors' thoughts that he isn't less than others because of his disability and twisted it into the idea that now, because of the formula, they are superior to all humans, that they would rule, ideally with Spider-Man by their side. So the next day, we have that scene where Peter goes to the NYPD and tells Captain Stacy about Dr. Connors. But instead of Captain Stacy actually asking the NYPD to look into Dr. Connors, since he knows him from his daughter working for him, he just goes to Kurt's house and talks to him a little bit. At the end, he's a little bit suspicious still, but Dr. Connors has pretty much convinced him that everything's fine. So Captain Stacy leaves, but then we have another scene with Dr. Connors and the lizard, where the lizard tells Kurt that Peter is Spider-Man. This is kind of surprising surprising to Dr. Connors, but the Lizard basically explains how it all fits together with their old research with Oscorp and how much Peter knows about Spider-Man. I think the Lizard, like with a lot of his ideas, picked up some subconscious thoughts that Kurt had when he figures this out. But I also think he does it because even though he's not sure that it's true, he wants Dr. Connors to be more up for the Lizard's plan to team up with Spider-Man to rule the world, given Dr. Connors' relationship with Peter. But the Lizard goes on about how they have to, quote-unquote, persuade Peter to join them. So the next day is when we get the scene of the Lizard attacking the school, but it's under a new context of him doing it to kidnap Gwen. So the Lizard gets away with Gwen, telling Peter that together they can rule over the Earth as a race of genetically enhanced superhumans if they join forces. Obviously Peter refuses, but the Lizard says that he'll have Gwen at Oscorp Tower in the meantime. And this is also when the full scope of the Lizard's plan is revealed. Peter asks him how they'll take over the world with just the two of them. But then the Lizard says it won't just be the two of them. That night, Oscorp tests out their brand new healing formula on hospital patients, and all of them will become lizard people. With that small army, they could easily take over the world and dominate all of mankind. The Lizard in this version doesn't want all humans to become lizards. He wants the lizards to dominate the humans. If Peter tries to stop the test from happening at the hospital, the Lizard will kill Gwen. But if Peter joins him and lets the test go on, he'll let Gwen go and she'll be spared in the takeover. So this is when Peter's at his lowest low of the movie. Despite him doing his best to be this hero, he failed. His mentor and father figure has become a monster, his girlfriend is in danger, and because the police still doesn't trust him, he's in a situation where he can't win. So he just sits alone in his room, mourning an inevitable loss. I know Peter doesn't listen to Uncle Ben's voicemail until the end of the movie, but in this version, I think now's a good time. And in this version, it goes a little something like this. Hey, Peter, look, I'm sorry. I know I told you that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. And don't get me wrong, that's true. But I think I was a little too hard on you. Look, you're just a kid. You have your whole life ahead of you, and right now you have a lot on your plate. You have school, worrying about colleges, work, photography, science, and now it seems like you're taking an interest in that girl Gwen. It's okay for you to make mistakes. Let me tell you a secret about being an adult. There is none. There's nothing that just makes you an adult. You've gone through more already with your parents than a lot of people I know have gone through their whole lives. You're a teenager. Go do teenage things. Make mistakes. Learn from them. Grow. And be with people that help you do those things. You seem to really have grown connections with Gwen and Dr. Connors, and that's great. Pursue them. Because, sure, with great power comes great responsibility. But at the end of the day, you don't owe anybody anything except for yourself. Alright, I've gone on long enough. I'll see you soon. Bye. And Peter sits there, tears streaming down his face, before he puts on his mask and webs out of his room. He has lives to save, because while a lot of people think that Spider-Man is Spider-Man because he lives by the fact that with great power comes great responsibility, that's not true. Spider-Man is Spider-Man because he knows that he doesn't owe them anything. And he helps people anyway. He webs through the city, super triumphant until he gets cornered by the NYPD. This is the big scene where he reveals himself to Captain Stacy and finally gets him on his side. On his way to Oscorp Tower, he suddenly hears someone screaming for help, so he takes a quick detour to see someone being mugged. So he goes down there, and after fighting off the mugger just enough to save the citizen, he looks at the mugger and recognizes him. It's Uncle Ben's killer. Part of Peter wants to drop everything and just beat the living hell out of this guy. But he doesn't. He webs away to Oscorp because he's not the vengeful person we saw earlier in the film. He's Spider-Man. So he gets to Oscorp Tower, and at first the Lizard thinks Peter's there to join them. But no, Peter says, He's just there on a pit stop to beat him up and help Gwen before he saves the people at the hospital. He and the lizard fight for a bit before Captain Stacy shows up and joins him, shooting the lizard as a distraction so Peter is able to grab Gwen and web her over to the hospital. There he grabs the formula before they can distribute it, but before he makes off with it, the lizard, who's pretty much taken Captain Stacy out, has come and starts fighting Peter over the formula. Peter starts calling out to Curt Connors. He knows is still in there, and after a while it works just enough that Connors is able to force the lizard to throw the formula on the ground and jump off the building. The formula's glass container shatters and the formula just evaporates into the air. Meanwhile, the lizard is impaled on a short skyscraper below. Similar to, get this, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as the lizard is seemingly dying, he transforms back into Dr. Connors. Peter jumps down onto the building and pulls Dr. Connors off, and they talk a little bit with Dr. Connors apologizing, and Peter drops him off at the hospital. So Peter heads back over to Oscorp, where Captain Stacy dies in his arms, with them establishing a father-like bond in his dying moments to the point where Peter is having flashbacks to seeing his parents for the last time. So fast forward to a couple days later. Everyone's at Captain Stacy's funeral, but Peter's at the hospital visiting Dr. Connors instead. Dr. Connors says he'll be alright and that they're treating the remainder of the formula in his system. They bond a little more and they see on TV that since the police have announced that they no longer hate Spider-Man, the Daily Bugle, which was once pro-Spider-Man and anti-police, now thinks Spider-Man is, well, a menace. So after that, we get the final scene with Peter and Gwen and we roll credits. But, of course, now Peter has changed. Throughout this whole movie, he's been chasing a father figure. But now, he's his own man. So the mid-credits sequence changes a little too. Now it's in the hospital with Dr. Connors being alright, but as soon as the nurses leave, the lights go out and Gustav Fiers arrives. Also, to add a little more menace to the character, when he leaves, he unplugs Dr. Connors' machinery. The nurses rush in, and once the lights are back on, they're too late. Dr. Connors is dead. So, what did you guys think of this? It took me a long time, but it's finally done. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.